Welcome to Get Serious. This episode, I wanted to dive into some kind of practical office setup content here. Something I don't think gets enough attention, especially given how much most of our day-to-day is spent in front of our computers and various screens and so forth here. So I just wanted to share some updates and my strategy as far as getting up to speed as far as setting up like the most efficient and practical workspace and workstation possible here, at least within range. You have a certain limited budget to work with, so I have not really upgraded my workstation, the setup in like over 7 years, and just figured out okay, this is worth going into further, and this is an area I think for me personally. I mean, everybody's going to have their own discretionary spending desires and requirements, but in a lot of areas of my life, like I'm okay with just budget options. Like I just don't care that much when it comes to work implementation tools or certain things like, I don't know, my personal training equipment, stuff like that. Like I'll actually care much more about the overall quality here, and especially for again the work side of things, given how many hours per day like it's besides my bed, which also it put a significant amount of investment into, like the mattress and the eight sleep cover and so forth. Like those are all just top tier investments to make. So much the rest of my time is spent in front of or at my workstation, so it's like, okay, some things are definitely lacking here, so what do we need to do to upgrade this so that it can just, allow for my productivity to be, not hampered by your workstation. Ultimately the person behind the screen, has to be delivering and executing on, what they need to do every day. You can't, you could have a $10 million workstation, but if you just procrastinate and get distracted all day, it's not going to do any good. But assuming you do have a solid work ethic and you're really gunning for results here, then just, getting those extra levels of productivity and enabling greater output to happen because your workstation is just set up better, like it's just worth the investment here. So with all of that in mind, as far as a philosophy, get more into like the technical steps on how to address this. So some things were like already pretty solid. I've had an M1 Max MacBook for 4 years at this point, and that was a very heavy, like top of the line at the time. Hefty price tag, obviously it's Apple, but based on the specs, I was like, especially for office work, if I make a purchase like this MacBook could potentially last for a decade, even with how fast hardware advancements are being made. And still, like 4 years later, can run any type of program. And I'm not doing like, even if I was doing crazy like visual processing or internal AI and so forth, it probably could still run it very effectively with the internal memory and so forth. But, that's just not my day to day. Like I need it to perform well with managing multiple screens or doing video podcasts and so forth, but it's not like crazy processing power that is needed here. So that's why it can just last for so much longer. But like the overall speed of managing a ton of applications, all of that has still just been completely solid since the time I bought that. So that's still a very good setup. I have, solid office chairs, solid. I mean, you can see if you're watching the video podcast of this, I mean, the 4K setup. So all of that was pretty good. But I felt like some other areas were probably lacking. And so, what I did was I just took a picture of my current workstation, and if you read my most recent Serious News newsletter, again, you can get that for free if you're not subscribed already. It's just once a week, comes out on Mondays, where I was talking about, well, the title of this one, depending on when you're listening to this, was what or how I was lowering my profit ceiling for 2026. But, within that newsletter, I was mentioning that we just kind of fell off the AI wagon for a couple months there. Like we were still utilizing everything that we had done so far, but we weren't continuing to push the envelope. And so like, okay, I need some ramps to get back onto the train here, to continue all of the progress that we had been making through much of this year. And so sometimes you got to take the easy steps, the more simple things. So I'm like, okay, there's some new models I need to work on. Let me not jump into like the very hardest tasks that I've just been delaying. Like for AI, you got to start easing yourself back in, and then the harder stuff becomes much simpler to dive into. So I'm like, okay, let me try out some of these new models. I've been Gemini 3. I've just barely been dabbling in, but I keep hearing great things. Let me give it my workstation, and let's start figuring out whether it can strategically update and critique what I need to do to improve my workstation. It was just tremendous. Like, I mean, the photo, I'm just surprised because it wasn't like super up close on all of the various parts of the image. But again, the AI image processing is just pretty remarkable, where it could just presumably zoom in even on my dual screen monitor and see that it was a Samsung model. It could detect that the microphone that I'm utilizing now is a condenser microphone. I didn't even know what that was. And so it started indicating, okay, yeah, shift this around here. And we came up with a game plan of like, okay, you're entering a higher level company. If you've built up a lot of resources here, like, so to get to the next level, like, what does your workstation need to look like to fit, pretty much an optimal setup for a mostly online entrepreneur nowadays. And so we significantly upgraded like a larger desk here. So like I had a 4-foot by 2-foot desk that was just getting too small. And so it's like, yeah, you got to get and it was just a manual crank. Again, this is 7 years ago, the last time I got an office upgrade set up. Like, yeah, you got to get the electronic, standing to sit here. And just get more space for you to work with. And so I was able to find over 5 foot, so almost 6 feet in width and like 2.5 feet in depth for a table. So a significant desk surface area increase. And found it for a pretty good price as well. And so like each of these steps, like the AI was telling me, okay, here's your recommendation for everything. But I just broke it down further. It's like, okay, this might be another 5 to 10 year investment here. So like, let's just not rush through this. Let's be very careful and strategic about what we're going to be buying to make sure it's worth our while. Because again, I spend hours and hours a day in front of this at any time that I'm in town. And so I was like, okay, taking screenshots of, hey, let's center in on the table first, the desk. Let's make sure we're squared away. Then we'll move on to the other pieces. And so figured out the table piece. Then it was like, okay, you want to get a couple of 27-inch monitors to use, and you can just vertically orient your existing monitor, which like the resolution isn't as great anymore, but it's like, for the vertical side, doesn't matter as much. That tends to be used maybe like for Slack or whatever. And so you can get like another mount to put the vertical screen on. And then it was suggesting, okay, for your MacBook, you can just keep it closed in clamshell mode. And so then you'll just have the external monitors being your primary workstation, which I hadn't really considered because currently I was using, MacBook as one of the primary screens and then just another dual screen monitor. And like, again, the AI was just, when I gave it the role of like, yeah, you're just master, remote workstation expert, and it really felt like I was talking with one like that. Like it was even orienting around, okay, depending on if you're right or left-handed, the vertical screen should go on one side or the other so that it's just more ergonomic for your usage. And then, we centered in on, okay, which brands and monitors should we be going after? Like, does the Hertz, I forget what it's called, the Hertz refresh rate. And it's like, yeah, I mean, anything over 120 is just like not going to be noticeable unless you're just, a gamer, which I'm not. Anymore, at least. I don't want to give myself any extra incentive to be doing that, but yeah, this workstation here for like, and pretty much like email, anything like that, anything over 60 hertz is just not going to be really noticeable for the human eye. And it was also breaking down. Okay, I was giving it a couple different brands, different price points, and it was like very specific. It was pointing out, oh yeah, this brand is actually owned by this parent company and so forth. They're known for being better quality. So like it was able to handle all of that kind of review process without me having to dive into Amazon reviews and seeing, oh, yeah, are there various issues with this particular one? That and then like I was looking at, okay, could I get like curved screen monitors? And I'm like, yeah, that's actually not going to be as effective, especially if you want to do a two or triple screen setup here, and your resolution isn't going to be necessarily any better. So like you save significant cost on that. And so like we solidified that, and then we had to figure out the mounting solution. And like currently I'm using almost like this makeshift wooden slat setup that, allows me to shift different levels if I'm standing or sitting. But, it's a very DIY setup that's been effective, but, it again could serve as room for upgrade here. And I was like, okay, should I get like a triple monitor mount? And it's like, no, don't do that. It's going to weigh too much. You're going to run into issues there. Like get a double and then a single for the vertical orientation with your existing Samsung monitor. So we squared away that. Then it was, providing opinions again on getting a dynamic microphone instead for the podcast. Again, this condenser worked out well. I just had no idea, but within a few days here or the following podcast, you'll probably hear quality increase as well now that we figured out a dynamic microphone. And, again, the total cost on all this stuff that I got was like a little north of $800 to get it. And the way we were finding the right deals and then brands that had, 95% of the quality of like the most cutting edge and top of the line brands, like it probably cut the overall price in half and still got like, again, 99.5% of the quality you could get for going super top of the line, which is, just great. That extra 5-10% is just not really going to matter here. And so like we got another mic squared away. And then it came down to some cable management, which, it was the AI was saying, your desk is just a mess here. You got to figure out a better way to manage all these cables. So we got all of that set up, and it was able to point out, because I use Apple as the OS here, is that you can't run a forked HDMI, meaning like if you have an external USB hub that has multiple HDMI ports on Windows, that would allow for separate displays for each HDMI if it's connected to different monitors. But on Apple, it doesn't work that way. On Apple, you need a dedicated each or on the various USB-Cs that are within the actual MacBook, plus it has a dedicated HDMI setup. And so it's like, you're already set up just fine with that. You have the room to use it, get this hub so you can, connect a couple of other cords here and you'll be squared away. So we figured out that piece as well. And so, overall, this was probably like a 2-ish hour exercise. Again, you probably could have done it way faster. Just fly through, give me and just, click buy, and square it up. But I'm like, again, this is a investment where I really need to make sure that it's fitting our, company needs and not, having to return some items because it didn't work out and so forth. And again, if I didn't double check a lot of this stuff, like I could have easily just bought the wrong things. Again, you want to be an AI driver, like check the AI's assumptions. Hallucination rates are way lower compared to even a year ago. And so you can trust AI response a lot more, but it still comes back to you need to provide the right context, you need to ask the right questions, ask for the right clarifications, which a lot of people don't do. So that's why I spent so much time there. Again, it all comes down to execution here, but I'm, just excited for having an upgraded setup where it's like, especially in the age of AI, when I want to have, desktop Claude or ChatGPT or Gemini interfaces up on a separate screen. And then I can have, a screen dedicated with Land ID open and then, various MLS channels and so forth. And just makes it a lot easier to flow through. Ideally though, for screen shares, I would love if you're using Loom and you could just not have everything just on one screen, but you could just like select different screens as you're recording. That would make things a lot easier. Maybe they'll do that eventually, but yeah. So that is another discussion piece. So Hopefully this is kind of helpful for you if you're considering workstation improvement, because again, you just want to eke out every bit of productivity you can in a competitive and difficult market here. And if you have some extra, room for expenses to eat away some of the tax hit before the end of the year, could be interesting for you, and just giving you ideas on how to get the ball rolling again with utilizing AI so that you can tackle the much more difficult tasks and workflows that can benefit your company even more significantly. So with that in mind, seriousland.capital for none of your land funding needs, and Land Daily Diligence Facebook group. Subscribe and share, everybody. Looking forward to next time. Take care now. Bye.